Good afternoon to all our listeners and viewers of the NDC Heartbeat podcast. We're happy to welcome all those who are listening on radio via WeFM, Vibes FM, Spice Capital Radio, 100.5 FM out of Grenville. And of course, we have Ride Along out of Brooklyn, New York. And online, you can find the NDC Facebook page and also our YouTube channel. So, welcome to another NDC Heartbeat episode. For today's presentation, what we'll do is to share with you a presentation regarding the care package which was put together and approved by the government of Grenada for the students of Carriacou who are returning to school come Monday. Also, you would hear from the Minister of Education making comments regarding this particular package which was shared, or in fact which was presented to students from Carriacou. Then what we'll do, we'll share with you some excerpts and presentations from the general debate of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. First, we would share with you comments from the Israeli Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, and the response made to him by the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mrs. Mia Mottley. Then we will share the presentation made by King Abdullah El bin Al Hussein of Jordan. And finally, our own Prime Minister, the Honorable Dickon Mitchell, as he delivered a sterling contribution to the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. That's your program for today. Stay with us. Back with you in a moment.
Welcome to Pure Grenada, the Spice Isle of the Caribbean. On October 1st and 2nd, the government of Grenada will host the second annual European Union Caribbean Sargassum Conference. We are excited to welcome governments, entrepreneurs, investors, scientists, and financial institutions from across the Caribbean and Europe. Together, we'll explore how to turn this growing environmental and economic challenge into new opportunities for our communities. Grenada is proud to be the hub where experiences are shared, innovative solutions are explored, investments are mobilized, and regional collaboration is strengthened to tackle this issue together. The need for viable solutions is undeniable, and it demands innovative approaches to transform Sargassum from waste into a valuable resource. Together, let's explore sustainable practices and exciting investment opportunities around Sargassum in the Caribbean Basin, where challenges can pave the way for incredible new ventures. Join us as we work to turn the tide.
Here now is today's episode as we commence the program with the care package presentation for the students of Carriacou.
Students of Carriacou and Petit Martinique attending T.A. Marichaud Community College and Nulo received education care packages from government on Wednesday as part of Hurricane Beryl relief initiatives. The packages will assist them to continue their educational journey at the institutions. During the handover ceremony on Wednesday organized by the Ministry of Education, Prime Minister Honorable Dickon Mitchell encouraged the students to appreciate the opportunities that arise from adversities. He assured that the dark days will soon be over.
Out of challenge comes opportunity. So you'd appreciate that if Hurricane Beryl did not pass with its destructive wrath over Grenada, the government of Grenada probably, nor the generous sponsors who have sponsored part of this care package would not have paid for your accommodation, paid for meals, or donate a laptop for you. So you see, life is funny. Sometimes, as your MP said, in the darkness, in the tough times, in the difficult times, you actually come out better, stronger, bigger, and more confident because of the adversity or the challenge that you faced. And that allows you to be more confident, more successful, knowing that the next time a barrel-like adversity faces you, you will overcome it as well. In the midst of a devastating hurricane, there were well-wishers, there were good Samaritans who don't know you, who've never met you, but who, moved by the challenges that you were facing, have generously donated to ensure that you can have it a little easier, and that the burden of the financial and material challenges of your education at this stage is lifted off your backs and the backs of your parents.
Following the passage of Hurricane Beryl on July 1st, the government received various assistance from organizations, agencies and countries toward the rebuilding and resuscitation of several sectors. The Prime Minister commended the private sector sponsors who stepped forward to assist the students in need from Carriacou and Petite Martinique. La Luna Boutique Hotel and Villas donated more than 100,000 EC dollars toward assisting students in Carriacou and Petite Martinique, and Republic Bank Caribbean Premier League, the CPL, donated US $50,000 towards the initiative. The CPL has also committed to accept some of the students as interns in 2025 during competitions.
And every time I've asked the owners of La Luna to assist young people in education, they've stepped up to do so. And sometimes when you think it's adversity, what is really before you is opportunity. So students, if I was in your position, I'd be handing in my name very early to make use of the opportunity to be an intern at the CPL. The games are played all over the Caribbean, from Guyana to St. Lucia, to Trinidad, to Barbados, to Antigua, to St. Kitts and Nevis. And it's a wonderful opportunity to gain new experiences, to meet international cricket stars, to learn about the administration of cricket, the administration of sports in general, logistics, marketing, communications, PR. The CPL has all of it, entertainment, etc. Our heartfelt appreciation for the generous offer and for making a significant difference in the lives of you, the students and teachers of Carriacou and Petite Martinique.
Minister for Carriacou and Petite Martinique Affairs and Local Government, Honorable Tevin Andrews, is pleased with the efforts by government and the private sector to support his constituents.
This support, this initiative, has come at a good time, the best time, to support the people of Carriacou and Petite Martinique. And the government continues to demonstrate that we don't only talk about Carriacou and Petite Martinique. We don't just pay lip service, but we back that up as well by our actions.
Education Minister Honorable David Andrews says over 60 students will receive packages worth in excess of $22,000 each. The packages include laptops, book and clothing allowance, food allowance, accommodation and transportation allowances.
Beryl probably took the roof and took some structures, but you get this well, Beryl and a million like it can't take it from you. And so I want you to understand what's happening here. This government understands, your government understands the value of education to its people, and we have put a high priority on education. And so it wasn't difficult to have my colleagues in cabinet pass this care package. When we came and we said this had to be done, we got overwhelming support. And in some cases, our Prime Minister would nudge, could we do this additionally? What else could we do? Because this government understands the value of educating its people. So let me just give you a quick overview of what this package is going to entail. So this package is going to be for 1 year. This academic year, starting September 2024 to 2025, and it's likely to end of July 2025. So it's a 1 year education care support package. This package will include for each student from Carriacou and Petite Martinique attending NULO, or TAMCC on the mainland, a laptop, a one-off book allowance of $1,200 to assist with acquiring books as might be required for your various courses. Note, that's a one-off, so it won't be repeated. After you get it this time, that's it. A one-off for clothing, and we know that all of the departments at the TAMCC has different t-shirts and colors, so we'll give you a one-off of $500 to be able to purchase your uniforms, probably a couple jeans and a couple of your t-shirts. That's a one-off, it won't happen more than once. And then you would have, over the period, for food, accommodation, and transportation, a monthly stipend of $2,000. It means that the initial payment that you receive, the first payment, will be approximately $3,700, that first payment, including the one-offs, and thereafter, every month, you will receive $2,000 in assistance towards your accommodation.
The handover of the first batch of packages was held at the Kirani James Athletic Stadium.
We take a short break to share with you some very important health benefits of our local cocoa. Don't miss it.
Wait a minute, this is a big one. Chocolate regenerates stem cells?
All chocolate has some cacao in it, except for white chocolate. Cacao actually comes from a plant. Studies have been done to show that the flavonols in cocoa stimulate stem cells to come out of your bone marrow like bees in a beehive in your bloodstream, and they go out and they find wherever it needs to be repaired. If it's in your heart, they'll fix it. If it's in your liver, they'll fix it. If it's in your skin, they'll fix it. And so we can eat foods like high flavanol cocoa in order to be able to actually get the stem cells to work a little bit better. Men who are in their 60s with heart disease just have 2 cups of dark chocolate hot cocoa a day for a month. Yeah. And they doubled the amount of stem cells in their bloodstream, and their circulation improved measurably. There was a study called the Cosmos study that was completed recently that showed that eating high flavanol cocoa decreases the risk of cardiovascular death.
As the book of Samuel says in the Bible, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. The eternity of Israel will not falter.
It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament, much which has guided many people across this world. But when we turn from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it is Romans that says to us, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Not any country, not any human being, so that the Bible can't be used as a convenient aid when it suits us and rejected when it doesn't. Mr. President, above all else, we need a global reset on peace. There needs to be global peace. And those of us who are old enough would have recognized that there are peaks and valleys as it relates to this issue of conflict. There are few areas where the world is more in need of the United Nations acting as the United Nations to secure the objectives of the Charter than in the area of peace and security. The silence that has engulfed Sudan is unacceptable and may well be rooted in the racism that the world still carries as a badge of honor from the victories of the last great war of the World War II. The actions in Myanmar cannot continue. Ukraine has sucked more oxygen out of the global community and the global financial system than any of us can appropriately accept at the very time when the world needs to be applying its resources and efforts to fight in the greatest crisis known to mankind. And the spread of the war from Gaza to the consequences in the West Bank to now clearly what is happening in Lebanon as we speak with Israel, all of these are but the tip of an iceberg of death, violence, and instability and robs the global community of oxygen and resources at the very time when we need it most in a strategic way. We all know, as students of history, that even the longest war in history came to an end. These wars, yes, they too will come to an end. But the question is when and at what cost, and without much loss of life. With how many children not being able to be either given the chance to live or will now live with memories of war that will affect their every action for the next 60, 70, 80 years of their lives. Innocent people are paying the price with the one thing that is theirs to give. And they don't give it willingly. It is their life. Unless we address the root causes of these wars, one by one, and the manners in which they are being sustained and financed, we will never, never know anything else other than war and rumors of war in these theaters. The transmittal of these scenes of horror in real time into people's bedrooms, into people's living rooms, will trigger two extreme reactions, neither of which are acceptable to us in the third decade of the 21st century. We will either get the desensitizing of ordinary people to the loss of lives, especially those of innocent children and women on the one hand, or we will get on the other hand the anger and inclination for vengeance that it spawns necessarily. We need peace. And it cannot be too difficult for us to work for peace. It is the same Bible that tells us in the stories of the Old Testament, much which has guided many people across this world. But when we turn from the Old Testament to the New Testament, it is Romans that says to us, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, not any country, not any human being, so that the Bible can't be used as a convenient aid when it suits us and rejected when it doesn't. In the midst of this maelstrom, we were very clear. My country took the step this year of recognizing and establishing diplomatic relations with the state of Palestine, in spite of having supported a two-state solution since 1969. And we did this because it is clear to us that the state and people of Palestine, human beings, are entitled to full recognition by integration into and support from the international community. The Charter does not say we the people, with the exception of any one group from any one part of the world. We join with others, therefore, in congratulating the state of Palestine in taking their seat among the United Nations member states as they did on the 10th of September of this year. And let me be clear, we condemn the actions of Hamas on October 7th. But we equally and strongly deplore the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, which is the result of the disproportionate use of force by Israel. There's no justification for it. And that is why treaties exist governing the rules of engagement for war. Because we as human beings learnt better and know better and committed to better. A two-state solution, no matter how elusive it may appear to be now, is the only answer. And I've said already this week that we have known difficult battles in mankind's history. But when we were in it, we didn't think we could achieve it. But we did. We abolished slavery. We removed apartheid in South Africa. These battles are not beyond our creativity, our capacity, and our resilience to resolve them. Similarly, we insist that the killing in Ukraine really has to stop. The people of Ukraine must be allowed to live within the internationally recognized boundaries of their state in peace and freedom from the threat of use or force. And as I said, it is sucking too much oxygen out of the global financial system, and countries that should be the beneficiary of aid are being told that they may have to wait in the interest of the defense of others because of war. I say to us truly, there has to be a singular commitment to build a peace. Truly. Mr. President, my own region has not escaped the scourge of instability and violence. The Americas do not constitute today a theater of war, but we are today witnessing, for some years now, an unprecedented escalation in the number and caliber of assault weapons which are finding themselves in the hands of criminals who are wreaking havoc on the legal systems and our societies, particularly in the small island developing states of the Caribbean and indeed in the wider states of Central and Latin America. This scourge caused by guns manufactured in the United States of America primarily also requires a fundamental reset. The right of persons to bear arms in countries not engaged in military conflict should not be an opening to accept as legitimate the presence of assault weapons in countries. It is simply not right. There is no place for assault weapons in our societies.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Your Excellencies, over the past quarter century, I have stood at this podium amidst regional conflicts, global upheavals, and humanitarian crises that have profoundly tested our global community. It often feels that there was not a moment when our world was not in turmoil. And yet, I cannot recall a time of greater peril than this. Our United Nations is facing a crisis that strikes at its very legitimacy and threatens a collapse of global trust and moral authority. The UN is under attack, literally and figuratively. For nearly a year, the sky blue flag flying over UN shelters and schools in Gaza has been powerless to protect innocent civilians from Israeli military bombardment. UN aid trucks sit motionless just miles away from starving Palestinians. Humanitarian workers who proudly wear the emblem of this institution are disparaged and targeted. And the rulings of the UN's International Court of Justice are defied, its opinions disregarded. So it's no surprise that both inside and outside this hall, trust in UN's cornerstone principles and ideals is crumbling. The harsh reality many see is that some nations are above international law, that global justice does bend to the will of power, and that human rights are selective, a privilege to be granted or denied at will. We cannot stand for that. And we must recognize that undermining our international institutions and global frameworks is one of the gravest threats to our global security today. Ask yourselves, if we are not nations united in the conviction that all people are equal in rights, dignity, and worth, and that all countries are equal in the eyes of the law, what kind of world does that leave us with? Your Excellencies, the attacks of October 7th on Israeli civilians last year were condemned by countries all over the world, including Jordan. But the unprecedented scale of terror unleashed on Gaza since that day is beyond any justification. The Israeli government's assault has resulted in one of the fastest death rates in recent conflicts, one of the fastest rates of starvation caused by war, the largest cohort of child amputees, and unprecedented levels of destruction. This Israeli government has killed more children, more journalists, more aid workers, and more medical personnel than any other war in recent memory. And let us not forget the attacks on the West Bank. There, since October 7th, the Israeli government has killed more than 700 Palestinians, among them 160 children. Palestinians held in Israeli detention centers exceed 10,700, including 400 women and 730 children. 730 children. Over 4,000 Palestinians have been forced from their homes and lands. Armed settler violence has surged, and entire villages have been displaced. And in Jerusalem, a flagrant violations of the historical and legal status quo at Muslim and Christian holy sites continue unabated under the protection and encouragement of members of the Israeli government. To be clear, this is in the West Bank, not Gaza. Almost 42,000 Palestinians have been killed since October 7th. So is it any wonder that many are questioning how can this war not be perceived as deliberately targeting the Palestinians? The Israeli government has been accused of genocide at the ICJ. Expressions of outrage at its conduct are echoing around the world. Cities everywhere have seen mass protests, and calls for sanctions are growing louder. International frustration with Israel has long been mounting, but it has never been more exposed. For decades, Israel has projected itself as a thriving Western-style democracy in the Middle East. But the brutality of the war on Gaza has forced the world to look closer. Now many see Israel through the eyes of its victims. And the contradiction, the paradox, is too jarring. The modern advanced Israel admired from afar, and the Israel that Palestinians have experienced firsthand, simply cannot coexist. Israel will eventually be entirely one or the other. That is the choice its leaders and its people will have to make. To live by the democratic values of freedom, justice, and equality for all, or to risk further isolation and rejection. Over and over, we have watched Israel try to achieve security through military means. Each escalation is followed by a pause until the next deadlier one. And for years, the global community has taken the path of least resistance, accepting the status quo of the ongoing military occupation of Palestinians, all the while paying lip service to the two-state solution. But it has never been more evident that the current status quo is untenable. And as the International Court of Justice's advisory opinion underscored 2 months ago, it is unequivocally illegal. The court's opinion bears a moral imperative to us all. The obligation it carries is one that our nations cannot afford to ignore for the sake of our world as well as the future for Palestinians and Israelis alike. Because both peoples deserve to live their lives in dignity, free of violence and fear. And the only way to achieve that is a just peace, one grounded in international law, justice, equal rights, and mutual recognition. That is something we, as nations and people everywhere, can and must unite around. Your Excellencies, the world is watching, and history will judge us by the courage we show. And it is not just the future that will hold us accountable, so will the people of the here and now. They will judge whether we as the United Nations will surrender to inaction or will fight to uphold the principles that anchor this institution and our world. Right now they are asking whether we will stand by as parents watch their children waste away, as doctors watch their patients die for lack of basic medical supplies, and as more innocent lives are lost because the world failed to act. This war must end. Hostages and detainees must return home. But every day we wait is one day too long for far too many. So I call on all countries to join Jordan in enforcing an international Gaza humanitarian gateway, a massive relief effort to deliver food, clean water, medicine, and other vital supplies to those in desperate need. Because humanitarian aid should never be a tool of war. Whatever our politics, one truth is undeniable. No people should have to endure such unprecedented suffering, abandoned and alone. We cannot surrender the future to those who thrive on division and conflict. I urge all nations of conscience to unite with Jordan in the critical weeks ahead on this mission. Almost a year into this war, our world has failed politically, but our humanity must not fail the people of Gaza any longer. Echoing the words of my father from 64 years ago at the 15th session of the General Assembly, I pray that this community of nations may have the courage to decide wisely and fearlessly, and will act with urgent resolve that this crisis and our conscience demand. My father was a man who fought for peace to the very end. And like him, I refuse to leave my children or your children a future we have given up on. Thank you.
The Assembly will continue its consideration of Agenda Item 8, entitled General Debate. The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Dickon Mitchell, Prime Minister and Minister for Infrastructure and Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation and Transportation, and Minister for National Security, Home Affairs, Public Administration, Information, and Disaster Management, of Grenada. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, members of the Assembly, guests and friends, thank you for the opportunity to address this Assembly. It is my honor to speak to you as the Prime Minister of Grenada and the Chair of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM. Mr. President, before I get into the core of my remarks, allow me to draw to your attention two hemispheric issues that require the attention of this Assembly. The first issue is that Cuba continues to face severe economic hardships. While Grenada and CARICOM welcome the United States' decision to remove Cuba from its list, and I quote, of states not cooperating fully, unquote, in the fight against terrorism, Cuba remains on the American list of state sponsors of terrorism, and the U.S. blockade remains in place. CARICOM is deeply troubled that the Cuban people have been forced to endure this 60-year imposition, which serves no constructive purpose and continues to harm the people of Cuba. We reiterate our call for the removal of Cuba from that list and the end of the blockade. Secondly, there is an urgent humanitarian crisis in Haiti, marked by acute food insecurity and a challenging security situation. We are grateful to Belize and Jamaica for sending security personnel to support the Kenyan troops, but the funding of the multinational security support mission remains critical. We are deeply interested in the United States' proposal to transition this mission into a formal United Nations peacekeeping operation. But regardless of the approach, we call on the international community to do its part to support the MSS mission and to alleviate the humanitarian crisis, especially by helping Haitian children's access to education. Haitians understand that the future of their country begins with investing in their youth. Thank you for consideration of these two important matters. Mr. President, my message today is simple. It can be summed up in one word: resilience. It is a trendy term, I realize, but for 16 million people in the Caribbean community, resilience is not merely a buzzword. It is the definition of daily life. Resilience resonates in our core as Caribbean people, making the most of tough circumstances and finding new ways to not only survive, but to thrive. So today, I want to speak about resilience in the face of climate change, paths to economic resilience, and the role of education in ensuring both. I will conclude by speaking about what Grenada and our fellow CARICOM nations are looking for: in terms of international cooperation, but also what we bring to the table in return. Mr. President, the notion of resilience is not just a policy goal for me. It is deeply personal. And I tell you the story that you are about to hear, not because it is unique, but because at its heart, it is an experience that has been shared among so many of us in Grenada and the Caribbean. I was born in 1977 in a small hillside village in the parish of St. David in Grenada. Most households, including my own, did not have running water or electricity. We would walk to the public standpipe to fetch water in buckets. In my small agricultural community, the people I lived with worked the land or took up domestic work in town. At the time, that was common in Grenada. We were an agricultural island. We lived modest lives, built on hard work, community, and a sense of determination. But when I was quite young, that began to change. In 1979, Grenada experienced a political revolution that brought many changes. Education became a focus. So did tourism. Then, in 1983, when I was only 6 years old, the revolution came to a violent end, and we were thrust into the spotlight of global politics because of American intervention. It was a dividing line in our shared history and in minds. By 1989, both my parents had left the island to pursue opportunities overseas. My aunt helped to raise my siblings and me. In the years that followed, I continued my education. However, at that time in Grenada, education was not state-funded after age 16. So to continue my studies, I had to hustle. I had to develop entrepreneurial skills. I collected spice in the hills, and I sold it. Many of the kids in my village did the same. Those were frugal years, and I had to be disciplined. Once I finished my A-levels, I returned to teach at my high school, much to the amusement of my friends, many of whom were still attending high school there. But this role helped me to save for the next step in my educational journey: law school in the islands of Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago. So within a few years, I became a lawyer in Grenada with my own practice, serving clients locally and internationally. My personal resilience in the face of the many difficulties that crossed my path over the years allowed me to achieve the dream I sought. Finally, I was in a position to give back to my community. But, Mr. President, there is a limit to resilience. In 2020, something happened that none of us in this assembly were prepared for. As the COVID-19 pandemic began to take root in Grenada, I could see the strain on many of our people. We could see the glaring inadequacies of the systems and policies that were in place to support us. I saw the tension between the government's decisions and the needs of the people. And so, I could no longer stay on the sidelines. For months, I met with people who felt the same way I did, hoping to find ways to help our communities adapt to the challenges. But eventually, I realized that no matter how much we try to support change from the outside, real and meaningful transformation had to come from within. So it was at this moment that I decided to run for office. But it was not an easy decision. But I was driven by the belief that leadership means listening, adapting, and being willing to step up when your people need you. And so now as Prime Minister, I'm determined to ensure that the resilience I learned becomes a cornerstone of Grenada's future and the future of the wider Caribbean. Mr. President, that means developing resilient minds. And so a major priority for me is ensuring that children in Grenada have the opportunity to learn, to study, and to realize their full potential. Because after all, it was education that took me from a small village to where I stand today, addressing you at the United Nations General Assembly. And it is education that will empower the next generation of leaders, thinkers, and dreamers, who I am sure will go on to achieve even more. So in Grenada, we are working to ensure that every child has access to free education up to the age of 18. This is because we understand that our greatest asset is our people. For small nations like ours, the path to resilience lies in unlocking the potential of our young people. But it is not just about traditional education. It is about preparing them for a digital and technological future. We need to ensure that they have access to digital education, to skills training, and the tools they need to compete in the global economy. Digital education and digitization more broadly is a priority for our government because we know that if we want to build future resilience in the next generation of young people, we need to prepare them with the relevant training now. So at a time where it is possible to work in any market in the world, from anywhere in the world, digitization means that young people in the Caribbean have just as much potential access to global opportunities as their peers in Europe or North America, and with the added benefit of year-round sunshine. So digitization for Grenadians represents the democratization of opportunity. And this is where international cooperation is crucial. By bridging the digital divide, we can empower our young people to create solutions that will help not only Grenada, but the entire world move forward into a stronger, more sustainable, and more resilient future. We have become experts at resilience in the Caribbean because that is the Caribbean's reality. In Grenada, our resilience has been continually tested. One of our most challenging moments in recent history came in 2004, when Hurricane Ivan devastated the island, leaving destruction in its wake and forcing us to rebuild from the ground up. Less than 1 year later, we were struck by Hurricane Emily. And so we borrowed heavily. And while we were thankful that we were able to do so, the financial toll has been immense. For many years after, we struggled under the weight of that debt. Mr. President, only 3 months ago, that resilience was again tested when the islands of Carriacou and Petit Martinique, which form part of the tri-island state of Grenada, were hit by Hurricane Beryl, causing unimaginable destruction. And so again, this round of rebuilding will take months, if not years. The lesson that we and the wider Caribbean community continue to take to heart is that we understand that we cannot continue to rebuild after every storm without seeking sustainable solutions. So with international partnership, we develop innovative financial tools like the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, which allows us to receive financial payouts and recover more swiftly from natural disasters. We also introduced a hurricane relief clause in our financial agreements, enabling us to suspend debt payments in times of crisis, giving us the resources we need to focus on recovery. These efforts reflect more than just economic policy. They show that small island nations like Grenada can develop sophisticated solutions to the challenges we face. However, we also understand that we cannot do it alone. We need partnerships with the international community. Partnerships that will help us access both the financial tools and the technology needed to adapt to this new reality. Grenada, like many other small island developing states, is baffled by the continued debate in some spaces about whether climate change exists. But we do not have the luxury of skepticism. Rising sea levels are already affecting lives and livelihoods in our coastal villages. And warming seas continue to spawn stronger and more frequent storms. Hurricane Beryl was the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record in the Atlantic. And so the message that we in the Caribbean have for those who are looking to adapt to climate change, our message is simple. Learn from us. If there is an upside from the many storms that we have endured over the years, it is the lessons that we were able to take away from the various disasters. We have lived through the destructive power of hurricanes, which can erase decades of progress in just a few minutes. But we've also seen that when communities are prepared, we can save lives and we can save livelihoods. There is much more we can do. There is much more we must do. As a region, we have a clear vision and a plan to harness technology, ranging from drones that assess storm damage to early warning systems that enhance our preparedness. But we cannot fund these projects alone. While nations like Grenada are doing our part, we need the international community to step up and support our efforts. We are asking for more than just financial aid. We are looking for partnerships where we can work together on climate adaptation. Because we believe the resilience we are building today, through technology, through innovation, through partnerships, can serve as a model for others. My friends, we are a living lab on the front lines of global climatic challenge. Let us help you. To paraphrase a famous tourism slogan, what happens in Grenada does not just stay in Grenada. The lessons we are learning can help nations facing their own climate crises, from wildfires in Canada to flooding in Europe. Join us in testing ideas and technologies that can make a difference beyond Grenada. So in concluding, Mr. President, friends, colleagues, resilience is not something that can be built overnight. It requires partnerships, innovation, and a shared commitment to a better future. Today, I invite the international community to join us. We are asking for the 100 billion promised to support climate adaptation and mitigation to be met. Partnership, in our case, requires concrete financial support to help us rebuild with greater resilience. But beyond that, we are also inviting the international community to partner with us so that we can share our experiences and learn from one another. In return, we offer our lessons in resilience. We offer the knowledge that comes from living with and dealing with the worst of climate change, from building back after devastation, and from finding innovative policies and programs to secure a digital future. Grenada, CARICOM, stand ready to share these lessons with the world. Because, my friends, resilience is not just about surviving a storm. It is about ensuring that together we emerge from it stronger, more united, and more understanding of each other than ever before. Mr. President, I thank you for the opportunity to address this August Assembly.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister and Minister for Infrastructure and Physical Development, Public Utilities, Civil Aviation and Transportation, and Minister for National Security, Home Affairs, Public Administration, Information and Disaster Management of Grenada.
Thank you for being part of the Heartbeat today, and join us again next Sunday when we'll do it all over again. Thank you. Have a great Sunday afternoon. Goodbye.